Hello, Andrew.
Hello, my darling. This is my great friend, Raven Sinclaire. And I had the honor and delight of meeting her when she invited me for a weekend in Asheville this spring. And I met not only her, but her really extraordinary, sober, serious group, a group that she's been cultivating with her extraordinary work for a long time. And today is a very sacred day for me, a very important day for me. So I'm so thrilled to be doing this dialogue with you because today is the day that the book that I have written with Carolyn Baker, Saving Animals from Ourselves, goes public. It's on Amazon right now. And you're the first person in the group of podcasts that I'm doing. And I think that's so appropriate because what you bring to the world is your own passionate realization of the divine feminine, your own profound study in the mystical disciplines and in Hermetic discipline, and your own utterly authentic shamanic knowledge. And I am so proud, I hope you won't take this patronizingly, but I'm so proud of the person you are and the way in which you do your work, because I've watched you work and you do it with great rigor, great authority, but also great humility. So thank you for you. And please give all of the people who are coming to see you for the first time from my group of people, please give us an overview of who you are and the work that you do and have done with such devotion for so many years.
Thank you, Andrew. I am so honored to be here. This is such a beautiful and powerful book that you and Carolyn have put together.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. I have been an Andrew Harvey fan for a long, long time. So to meet you in person as I did recently and even have you at our house was
exactly at your house, yes.
So fun. Yes, when you met our cats.
Yes, well, that was the ceiling of our relationship, the cats, of course, yes.
It was.
Now your cats and my cats talk on the telephone all the time, you know that.
They do, yes.
They do.
Always chattering, yes. I facilitate connection and reconnection. That's what I do. So this is so perfect. My preferred platform is through the ancient wisdom of the Hermetic principles and the alchemical steps. And we do some deep processes. I also work one-on-one with clients, but I facilitate some processes where we peel away the layers so that we can reconnect people with who they really are, which also reconnects them with the natural world, with the animal kingdom, and with source or creator, because of course it's all mirrored with everything else, isn't it? So thank you for
it's also a very rigorous discipline that you've evolved over these years. There are many, many steps, and you put them into extraordinarily clear form. And what you're doing isn't simply to reconnect people with themselves. That's wonderful enough, but you've got a very action-oriented mind and heart. This is not about another new age way of feeling fabulous about yourself. It's about getting real, getting down, and getting going. And you know that we're in a terminal situation potentially, and you know that there are amazing opportunities possible if only we can get back to the indigenous ground of our being. And what you've done is marry an indigenous sensibility with a profound, rigorous, mystical, hermetic discipline, which is why I love what you do so much, because it's got real grounds in the ancient indigenous tradition, and it's got real clear steps derived from the rigorous discipline of alchemy and hermetic principles. I really salute you. That's a fabulous cocktail, and and it gets people drunk in the right way.
Not all of it is very pleasant, you know?
No. So, are you kidding me? Yes.
It is my processes are 6 to 9 months long, and they're very rigorous. And then there are, other levels of them. I don't like to use the term level because we're all teachers and we're all students, but
absolutely.
But yeah, it's a rigorous process for sure.
And you've been on a very rigorous journey yourself, and I know something about it. But let's turn to animals. Let's turn to the creation.
Yes.
One of the reasons I loved you apart from being, you impressed me enormously with what you are and what you do, is your overwhelming love for your cats. Because that's the surest, clearest way to my heart, because you really know who cats are, and you know what animals are from your own inmost experience. So can you speak out of the depths of your own experience about the revelation that has come to you about what animals are and what they can help us understand and achieve in our own lives?
Wow, that's
That's a big
it's
question.
overwhelming. It's an overwhelming thing, really, because you see the divine in them, of course,
Right.
and I guess I've always been an animal lover. Of course, we've always had animals and as part of our lives and all that. But I think the turning point for me was when I began to do shamanic sessions for people, and sometimes ancestors would come through, and sometimes animal companions would come through.
Right.
They could have been animals that they actually had as pets, or spirit animals, either one, and I realized that they were the same as us. I had always thought that, or I'd always thought that I knew. Of course, they're the same as us, but I really was able to embody that knowledge and that knowing that these are us. You know, there is no separation. There is no other. And
they're equal to us. We're not in some position of superiority to animals. So many of the mystical systems and religions have told us this is an outrageous malformation of the truth. When you really love an animal, when you really meet an animal in its divine truth and its divine personality, you realize you're in the presence of a being just as sacred, just as empowered, just as potentially illumined, perhaps in some ways more so than yourself. And this really brings about a revolution in consciousness, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Yes, I love the story about Purball in the book, and I've had that experience as well. I had that experience on a hiking trail with a mountain lion that was sitting up on a ledge, and I've had that with my own cats. Where
Just the experience you had with the mountain lion. I want your experience to be radiant here.
So this was years ago, and my children were little, and one of them was on my back, actually in a backpack, and I was hiking, and the rest of the family had already gone back, and I was going to make another loop and go back to our campsite. And I was in this forest. It was actually in East Texas. And I was on a forest trail and had this complete experience of pure presence. As you know, we get those, sometimes we get those glimpses that change our lives. And it was one of those, and I was guided to look up on a cliff.
Wow.
And there was this beautiful mountain lion, which, you know, they're not supposed to exist in East Texas, but they are there. And several people have seen them, but it was just lying there looking at me. And I had a baby with me and no fear at all. It was just this pure peace and such amazing gratitude. You know, tears just streamed down my eyes, because to have this moment with this beautiful creature in this beautiful setting, and you just feel a part of it all.
And being accepted and being loved by a being as majestic as that, utterly in harmony with the whole world, that was an initiation for you into the fundamental interconnectedness and harmony of the creation, wasn't it?
It was indeed, yes.
You couldn't possibly, when you have an initiation like that, think of the being that's initiating you as inferior to you. You couldn't. This is really darshan in the Indian sense, isn't it? It's a direct moment when you see that every single living thing is completely, integrally divine.
Yes.
There's a wonderful phrase in a poet that I've just translated called Angelus Silesius, when he says, "A fly in God is as great as an angel." And a tiny worm is as much God as the greatest sage. When you have authentic divine experience, all of your categories dissolve in wonder, and you realize that the world is so much more glorious than you ever imagined. And you realize that humanity's fantasy of power over the creation is a complete fantasy for two reasons. One, we do not have the power. The power is graced to us by the power. And until we recognize that, we will continue our work of destruction. But you also realize that the fantasy of being special is so obscene when you really connect with the divine specialness of every creature, even the tiny flea and the worm and the mountain lion. How could they not be just as special through divine grace as we are? And this is the revolution of consciousness that has to happen on a major scale urgently now, because as you know, in this last report that came out last week, and we talked about this when we were both in tears. We were both saying, oh my God, because we knew it, but to actually face the facts. The report says that 1 million species are now on the brink of extinction. The insects are disappearing, which may be mean that food supplies will be diminished within the next decade in such a way that hundreds of millions of people will be starving. Lions and tigers and elephants and all of the glorious species that we love so much may be very well gone within our own lifetime, and in fact are disappearing at a rate that even the doomsayers find darkening. So the discussion we're having isn't just a beautiful discussion between two friends. It's a discussion between two revolutionaries who know that unless the human race goes through a major transformation in its relationship to the creation and in its acknowledgement of the divine presence in animals and all of the amazing things that animals can give us and teach us and guide us to, we are going to die out and take a great deal of the creation with us. These are the facts, and I think increasing numbers of people are waking up to these facts. And this was the reason why Carolyn and I spent 3 incredibly difficult, grueling years, amazing years, getting this book as clear as we possibly could, because we wrote it 3 times, actually. The first time was a sort of grand slam book. This is what's going on. These are the possibilities to do something about it. But we realized people have had those kinds of books. They don't need any more warnings. And anyway, they're in a state of paralysis and despair. And many people want to shut off themselves because it's overwhelming. Wow. And then we wrote it again, and that didn't work. And then suddenly I had a download, which I shared immediately with Carolyn, who completely agreed that it should be written as a sacred initiation. It should be written in 3 parts, like all the great initiations have. Who am I talking to? You're a shaman, you know this work. In the first part is the vision. It has to be so inspiring that you're willing to really gird up your whole soul and heart. In the vision, we really lay out what would happen to us and to the creation and to our world if we really allowed the divine truth of the presence of the divine in the whole creation and in animals and in their astounding powers of guidance and discipline and radiance and love to dawn upon us and humble us and transform us. And then in the second part, we go into the terrifying data, because by now we've been inspired enough to be able to face it. And in every section, there are practices to get you into the vision. So we're not just offering information, we're offering the way to prepare yourself to receive the fullness of each of the 3 stages. In the second stage, we give a very grand practice drawing on the vision that can really get people strong and alive and empowered. And then we go shortly but very powerfully into the terrifying data, which we have to be aware of, because you have to align the innocence of the dove, the vision, the mystical vision, the possibility, with the wisdom of the serpent, the real darkness that's really here and really threatening our reality in all of its forms. And then in the last section, we have a series of glowing, wild interviews with people who are on the job right now, especially my great, great friend and the executive director of my institute, the Institute of Sacred Activism, Jill Angelo, to whom the book is dedicated, because she's put her whole life on the line to create a sanctuary in her own home, Moondog Farm. And this Moondog Farm is now engendering a Moondog movement, which this book is designed to celebrate, in which people everywhere are invited to get real about what's going on and really turn up and really start modeling what Jill is modeling, how to make your home a sanctuary in these times for animals that so desperately need it. So we've really come out with not only a map, but also the practices that can help you get to that map. And we're combining three things, as you know, in the book. We're combining the latest discoveries, which are mind-boggling, about animal consciousness, a greater revolution as quantum physics, which are proving what you experienced with the puma, and I've experienced with my cats, that
Yes.
animals are awake with fabulous intelligences, which in some ways may be much greater than ours, and which we need to draw on if we're going to have a hope of survival. And this is now being proved. In the last 30 years, there have been these massive, massive, massive breakthroughs in the understanding of animal behavior, which just lift the top of your head off when you try to come in, as much as quantum physics does. We're also talking about the cause of our weird and terrifying behavior with animals, which is fundamentally that we're extremely dissociated from and in war with our own animal nature, and our war with our own animal nature is projected onto animals. And this is unique to our book, but all of the psychoanalysts and the activists that I've talked to about this say, oh my God, that's it, that's the real cause. And then we're bringing forward real solutions by real people who are doing real work right now in the real world to inspire everybody else to get going right now, but in a grounded way. So that's my vision of what the book has done. But how did you read it? How did it speak to you?
Well, I was, it is an initiatory process, and there is an otherworldly aspect of it, because
Yes.
I noticed that I sat down to read it and hours passed, and I was done. and I didn't know what had happened. It was one of those experiences where you have to
Thank you.
go ground yourself a little bit after that. But it's beautiful, and it's terrifying, and it's powerful, and I just think it's I'm not sure that I've ever read anything like it, Andrew. So
There is
kudos.
no, I don't mean to be pompous, which of course I can be, but it is a unique book. There's nobody that, Carolyn and I have brought together things that have never been brought together, because there are books about animal behavior, there are books about the horrible situation, but there is no book that is designed as a sacred initiation into the creation to empower people with all the different forms of knowledge that they're going to need to do something. This is unique. Yeah. It's a visionary, grounded book at a time where we need vision and grounding more than oxygen, especially when we deal with this horrific situation.
Yeah, I was caught with this report that came out May 6th about, we're talking about Brexit and tariffs and and all these things when we are diving into the abyss of the end of humanity as we know it. Is that too dramatic? I mean, it's just
it's not too dramatic. It's actually what's happening, and the triviality of our discussions and the triviality of our divisions at a time when the animal species is going extinct and the environment is collapsing and our entire creation is falling apart through our greed and craziness and ignorance and apathy. The triviality of all, it's enough to drive any sane person into wanting to lie down under a friendly truck, which is of course not what we're going to do, but it is. We have to face that this is a situation which demands absolutely the best of all of us right now to come forward and collaborate.
I was struck in the book. There are so many examples, or the entire concept really is this issue of correspondence and the mirror, and how we do one thing is how we do everything. But the Hermetic principle of correspondence, which is considered the most important for the evolution of humanity, is that we exist in everything, and everything, there's always a corresponding factor in everything else. And so when we meet a bear in the driveway, like I did a couple of days ago when I walked through my door, you say, what is that message for me? What is the mirror message for me? This is just so important, and we are walking around on automatic pilot for the most part as humans. And the more mechanized our world becomes, the more mechanized we become because of the correspondence. And so what do you suggest? And I know what you laid out in the book, but just in this moment, what do you suggest for next steps for people?
Well, no, what do you suggest?
Hmm.
Because this is about you. I want to know what your wisdom suggests to people.
Well, you know, that inner work, I mean, everything that exists outside of ourselves, every issue that we see, every war that's being fought is actually our own inner wars and our own inner issues. And so, you know, there's this great, I'll paraphrase it because I don't have it in front of me, but there's a great Buddha teaching, I believe it's attributed to the Buddha, that says you can have, you know, worlds filled with wealth and give it all away in service to charitable causes. And it wouldn't be even a fraction of the merit that would be gained by someone who embodied and taught that there is no separation.
That's it. That's what a beautiful answer, because that person who embodies that is radiating it and waking everyone else up to the nature of reality, which is the only final way in which we can possibly get through this. We've all got to wake up to what the Buddha called Indra's net, that the reality is like a net of jewels. And each node of the net is a diamond, and in each of the facets of each of the diamonds, all of the facets of all of the other diamonds is reflected.
Yes.
That's called jijimuge in Japanese. And when you wake up, that's what you know. Whether you're a shaman or a Buddhist or a Hindu or Zsa Zsa Gabor enlightened, that's what you're going to see, because there's only one reality, one, and it's all interconnected. And it's the most amazing experience. But it's an experience that has responsibilities, because then you have to act like that and act from that.
Right.
And one of the things that you know and I know is that animals can guide us into that experience. Because I think when you talk to any animal lover, the first thing that they will say is that animals teach them unconditional love. And of course, that teaching is a teaching that goes to the heart of interconnectedness. Because when you wake up to an interconnectedness, it's such an astounding experience that all you feel from the bliss of that experience is love, immeasurable love and compassion towards everything that exists, because you now know that they're all in you and they're all holy. And that fills you with rapture and deep protective compassion.
Yes.
But actually, and I think this is one of the strengths of what you teach and what you embody, and what I am trying with Carolyn to get through in this book, it's not only unconditional love that animals teach. That's amazing enough. But animals, the relationship with animals gives us two additional extraordinary gifts. The first gift that can happen if we evolve the senses that can come from awakening is that all of the different amazing intelligences that animals have, each one unique and interconnected, could potentially also be available to us if we were humble enough to be available to them. What could an octopus teach us? What could a dolphin teach us? What could be taught in the field of reality to us if we were transparent and humble and awake enough to learn? You learned a great deal from that mountain puma. It wasn't just unconditional love. You learned about the secret of peaceful coexistence with reality. That's the truth of enlightenment, right? And that puma was as great a teacher as the Dalai Lama at that moment to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
The other thing that animals can teach, and I know you know that's because I watched you with your cats, you and Steve, the way in which you treat your cats is the way in which I treat my cats, which is as holy priestesses and priests of reality. Your house is a temple and to your cats, as my house is a temple to my cat. Because what I've learned in my relationship with Jade and all the cats, but especially with this most beautiful cat that I live with, this sensational being that I live with, that is my beloved. What I've learned is that she's not only giving me unconditional love, she's not only teaching me constantly how to be calmer and steadier and more in equilibrium with the harmony of everything, because she's in constant meditation. And I know she is, because I can tell. But she's also, by the way she loves me, and the way she's inviting me to love her, she's teaching me about embodied divine human love.
Mm.
And one of the things we talked about at length when we first met is that there's a new kind of love coming into the human race, which is deeply erotic, but not genital, which is deeply heartfelt, is profoundly lucid. It's mental, it's heart, it's body, all in one, governed by the radiance of the heart. And this is the state in which animals are in naturally, but it's the state that human beings have to learn how to be in. And animals, the loving of animals can take you into the radiance of this embodied love state more powerfully than any other being. A great sacred friendship can do that for a human being. When I sit with you, I feel love for all of you
Mm.
with the whole of my heart. And for Steve, I feel the same love. And you feel it for me. I know that. I can feel it. But it's very rare in humanity to meet that. And very few lovers, except the most illumined lovers, get to that place. But human beings have the opportunity with animals because they're so much simpler in the deepest and holiest sense than we are, to be guided by animals, to arrive completely here, burning with heart presence in every cell of the body. And what that gives us a clue to is the next stage of human evolution, next mutation, which is transfiguration, which is the completely embodied divine human being.
Yes.
This is vast stuff. And I think one of the strengths of the book is saying that. We've actually had the courage to say that. And I don't think that's ever been said, although it's been known in the indigenous traditions. They don't have to say it, they know it because they live it. Does that ring true to you, what I've been saying?
It does. Of course it does, yes. And I was thinking about when this report came out, May 6th, of course, I'd already read your book because you were kind enough, Carolyn was kind enough to email it to me, so I'd already read it by that point. But when that report came out, I thought about all the people reading that and the fear and the anger, you know, that would arise from that. And there's an interesting difference that your book so beautifully lays out, the potential that we can reach as humans is that we can, read those statistics and be terrified and try to make change from that place of being terrified or angry.
Absolutely. That's not going to work. Yeah.
No. So we can try to make change by being afraid of what is, what might happen. Or when we are truly in that embodied place where animals can take us, we automatically make change. We automatically promote right action out of love of what is.
That's so beautifully said.
So thank you. And I mean, your book so beautifully laid that out. It's just, everybody needs this book. And I know that sounds, I'm not trying to do an infomercial at all, but as I was reading it, I was just thinking, I mean, it speaks to everybody at any level, at any place in their life. It does it in a way that I've never seen before. I've never read a book that did that before. So powerful stuff, Andrew. So important.
Well, you've hit on something that I think is really at the center of both of our visions. And that's why I recognize the work that you do so beautifully and so humbly. And I have to say humbly because, I've been around in this new age circus for much too long in a way, and I'm still alive, so I'm more alive than ever. But I've met a lot of people with real skills who are really in some fantasy that they're special, that they know something that they then have to mercantilize, and then they set themselves up as gurus. And to me, all of that is just boring horseshit. It's so stupid because we're all in this tremendous evolutionary shift together. We're all in the same burning boat of meat together. We all have parts of the puzzle. We all need to come together to share humbly the amazing gifts that the divine has given us to try and help humanity in a spirit of radiant collaboration and comradeship and humility and joy. And I saw that in you. And I knew that was also partly because of your intense communion with the creation. The creation taught you that. The shamanic training that you've been through taught you that. Your love of your cats taught you that. The hermetic principles that you so beautifully train people into exemplify that. They're the distilled wisdom of the Mother Father for all people on all paths. If they don't get with the Hermetic principles, they really aren't getting with the way in which the divine grace operates in the laws of the world and the laws of the creation. That's the strength of the principles that you work with. I'm telling my grandmother to suck eggs, but that's the truth. And what you've just said, and this is, I think, where we could perhaps just end this conversation, because what you've just said is absolutely the most important thing for everybody listening. Look, the situation that we're in is horrifying, terrifying, paralyzing, extreme, and potentially terminal. That's the truth. If we begin to imagine that we're going to in any way help the situation by being paralyzed and despairing and sickened and disgusted and only outraged, we are just perpetuating the very split, divided, separatist consciousness that has caused the situation, and nothing that we do from that consciousness, however well-meaning, will be of any help. And this has all been designed by the divine, because this is an evolutionary crisis. We either evolve to the next level of non-dual, humble relationship with everything and everyone in the one, acting from that relationship on every level in our lives and in our political choices and in our economic choices and our business choices and in every single choice, or we die out. So the divine has decided that one human race is over and another human race is being born as we speak, through the agony of the response to this utterly terrifying evolutionary whirlwind that we're being battered by. And what you've pointed to is the only way through, and you and I both know this. Your shamanic and hermetic tradition has taught you this. My lifelong experience has brought me to the place. We'll only get through this by absolutely acknowledging the dark, but standing in joy, standing in non-dual love, standing in the commitment to pour our lives out in service of the endangered creation, of other human beings, of animals, of plants, of insects, because they are all us. And the solutions born from this consciousness, which is embodied divine human consciousness, those solutions are not yet completely available to us, because we can't even begin to imagine them until we are in that consciousness, where when they'll be fed to us with astounding clarity and astounding naturalness. And those solutions that we find in the field of the one, through non-dual love and love in action and deep commitment to service, those solutions have a heaven of a chance of really not only helping us mutate into another species, but actually helping us turn around the situation at 50 seconds to midnight. That's the game we're in.
It is.
Hallucinatory, but how thrilling. Instead of being paralyzed, be thrilled, and be thrilled because we have not only God, this extraordinary beloved who lives in us, but we have in our animal companions, in our homes. If only we can learn to look at them and feel them and love them, we have our greatest possible guides into this embodied divine consciousness and embodied divine human love. Whoever guessed it, whoever knew, but it's true.
It's true. Beautifully said. I couldn't have said that better myself.
Oh, you will, Oscar, you will.
Well, Andrew, again, you and Carolyn have put together just this amazing, beautiful initiatory book that anybody can buy on Amazon. Is that correct?
Yes, it's all available in Amazon. Can you give us one more experience before we go about how an animal's presence has changed your consciousness in life? Because I know you've had hundreds of these. And perhaps also alert people from your shamanic training how to begin to read the signs of the appearances of animals in their lives. And before you do that, I'd just love to tell you a brief story, because this happened literally yesterday. And I was thinking of you in our conversation, because we talked about how animals are constantly giving us messages from the divine. I've discovered this amazing composer who died at 25 in 1918. She was an amazing French woman. Her name was Lily Boulanger. And she wrote, as she was dying, a setting of the psalm, "I have cried out of the depths to thee, O Lord." And I'd heard from a friend of mine who was a real music buff that this is one of the greatest pieces of religious music ever written. And I'd been longing to find it. It's very difficult to find. And I was in a used CD shop. I found it and I nearly passed out with excitement, ran back. Well, not ran back because I'm too old to run back. I walked steadily back and put it immediately on the CD and went into ecstasy because it's just the most astounding piece of music you could possibly imagine, written by a mystic composer as she's dying, as an offering to the world. It's not a depressing, it's agonized and ecstatic and compassionate and plea for transformation on every scale in music. And I cried. I said, "Thank you, Lily, for having done this. And this is the music of our time." Although she did it in 1918, I felt that it was the music for now, for this terrible, amazing moment we're in. And I looked out of the window as I was experiencing this overwhelming gratitude, and I saw what I've never seen, and I've lived here for 8 years. Out of my window, I saw an eagle circling really close to my window. And I knew, as you know these things, that this was the soul of the universe, the soul perhaps even of Lily herself, saying, "You got it, you heard it, you saw it, you knew it, this is it." And it was a confirmation of the depth of my response. The universe participates through animal and bird and insect apparitions with our own state to show us, yes, you're right, you're in harmony. Wow, good for you. Well done.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh my gosh. I often wonder because I spend so much time on animal encounters, thinking about them and just trying to be in the moment with them, that I often think of the people that don't pay any attention to it, what that must be like.
What world are they living in? Well, it was the world we probably lived in before we knew this.
Probably.
It's so much more amazing, the participatory universe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Give us one experience, darling.
Well, I will. There are so many, but the one that, intuitively came when you asked that was that I grew up with a fear of snakes because my mother gave that to me. She was terrified of snakes. She couldn't even look at a picture of a snake. I mean, it was just this irrational, lots of shadow there. But
I would say
when my oldest son was born, he loved reptiles from the time he was tiny, and he was a toddler, and we lived in Texas at that time. And so when he got to be a little bit older, he would bring home snakes, he would go get them. And so I knew that I had to learn everything about snakes and teach him so that he would not pick up a poisonous one. And so I began to do that and just immersed myself in snake study and
wow.
the beauty of them. And we've had pet snakes now. I've worked for an animal preserve where I actually took snakes to classrooms and showed them to kids. And
wow.
they're just this, they're all about transformation and feminine wisdom. And they're just the most fascinating creatures. So I have a deep, deep love of snakes and have had so many snake encounters. And I know which ones I can pick up and which ones I shouldn't. If they want to be picked up, I don't force that, but a lot of times they do. And I've learned a lot from snakes, I have to say.
What have you learned? What would you say you've learned from this relationship of real respect and adoration of snakes?
Well, they know when to let things go. They know when to shed the old, and it's no problem for them. And that's something that I've, struggled with in earlier years, and probably still do to some extent, is finally releasing that which no longer serves. That you're done with that, and so that's probably been the biggest lesson for them. So when I see one, I always ask, or even if I see a snake skin that's been shed, I always ask, what is it that I am hanging on to for too long?
They're also at home in the dark. They live underground and come up. And this is why when Jesus gave us the greatest instruction that he ever gave us, how we are called on earth to unite the wisdom of the serpent with the innocence of the dove, he chose the snake as the bridge between the shadow and the light. So what the snake does in the mystical archetypal sense is bring up into consciousness, make available all the shadow knowledge which otherwise remains unconscious.
Right.
Astounding. Why would he have used the wisdom of the serpent if the serpent wasn't a sublime teacher of precisely what all of us need to do, which is to get in contact with the dark inside us, the dark outside us, without fear? Because if you can make that wisdom conscious and align it with your visionary passion, then you become a stable, grounded, sacred activist, mystic, divine human visionary and servant of transformation in the world.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
And it's a great treasure hunt. You know, I work a lot with shadow work and with doing this with people in my classes and clients, and some of them have done several processes with me, and you know, the more you do it, it gets to where you have no shame about it at all. It's just something to observe. Oh, look at this, look at what I just uncovered, and you easily and freely share it with everybody because we all have it. And
Exactly. Who are we kidding? I had this incredible conversation with somebody I love, and he said, I am totally incorruptible. And I said, are you kidding me? You'll only be totally incorruptible when you realize just how corruptible you can be. Because it's only your shadow and making your shadow conscious that can ever give you a chance of really being incorruptible, because you know how easily seduced you are by all kinds of rubbish. So your shadow turns out to be your friend, and it turns out to be what links you to every other human being in compassion. We're all in a lunatic asylum. We're all nutcases. So instead of judging each other, let's laugh like Alcoholics Anonymous people laugh when they share their stories, because we're all alcoholics of one addiction or another. And then let's get down to helping each other and really getting this consciousness into the truth and aligning it with vision and going forward groundedly. And that's the snake. That's why the Minoan priestesses, who are obviously priestesses of the Divine Mother, that's why their arms are always twined by snakes. That's why the Kundalini is always represented as a snake. That's why the Aboriginals describe the creative power as the rainbow snake. And you've been initiated by your deliberate desire to have a passion for snakes into that truth through that passion for snakes. Imagine if you took the same passion and devoted it to dolphins, because dolphins have a different archetypal realm. And that would, a similar initiation into a very important aspect of divine reality would be given you. This is what's open to us. These are the new relationships that are open to us as a human race. They were always here with the indigenous tribes. They know this. I remember one of the stories I tell in the book, which really amused me terribly, actually, because when I was discovering all of this, of course, at first I thought, oh, well, I'm discovering this. And then reality set in, and I realized they've known this forever. You know, my great Aboriginal friend, Bob Randall, who's the Dalai Lama of the Aboriginals, and the Achua people I lived with, and the amazing people I've met in South Africa around the White Line, they know this. Why would they? This is natural for them. And I went with that discovery to a Jungian analyst I knew, who's the most brilliant man I know. And he said, oh, Andrew, this is all projection of yours. You know, this is not true. This is just projection. And I knew at that moment, Western knowledge is so hopelessly limited, because I knew what I was experiencing. And then I talked to one of my greatest friends, who's a fabulous 6'6" 6'6" ex-opera singer, Maori chieftain son. You don't get more weird and wonderful than that, but he's a great healer and a great shaman. I said to him what I was experiencing. He said, oh, we've known that all forever. You know, thank you for joining the real world. Finally, after all your Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity, you got it. There you're coming into reality at last. And it was such a confirmation, because although these relationships now are absolutely essential for our survival and are really miraculous and are being backed up by all these scientific discoveries, you and I both know from our relationship with the indigenous traditions that this has been the foundational wisdom of the human race. And what we're doing is really pouring the best of the old wine into utterly new bottles and drinking it right now, because we need to be drunk on this wisdom to have the power and the energy and the passion and the joy to stop humbly working to preserve the creation.
Beautifully said. Yes.
It's that puma and my cats and your cats are all smiling at this moment.
They are. They are
Yeah,
indeed.
thank God. And, please, everybody, on this day when this book comes out, please go and buy it. It's the cost of a Starbucks breakfast for two.
Mm.
Really, you know, it takes longer to write a short book than it does a long book. And Carolyn and I wrote the shortest book we could in the clearest way we could, in the most exalted and grounded shape we could, because we know how essential it is for the future of humanity to get into conscious relationship with the creation at this level, at this grounded divine level in the great field of the one. And please, please, not only get the book, but read the book, do the practices, have the experience, and share the experience with your animals, who will be very grateful that you're finally turning up in the real field with them and suddenly reveal all sorts of things to you that you never suspected they knew or could reveal. And be joyful now that all of these different kinds of wisdom, through Raven, through me, through all these people in the wonderful wild world we are, all these kinds of wisdom are returning in new ways to empower you. Don't get despairing at this terrible situation. Look at it and use the agony of the situation to really hone your will and deepen your practice so that joy can possess you and service can become the ruling passion of your entire experience. And you will live a divine life on earth, whatever happens, with animals who speak to you and lead you and guide you. And that is the reality of this amazing creation.
Wow. Oh, Andrew. This is such a passionate labor of love that you and Carolyn have put out there for all of us. And I just can't, I mean, it leaves me speechless a little bit, but it is just a deep journey. It takes one on a deep, deep journey, and it's something that we all need to do at this point.
We do.
Yeah.
Would you just say how people can get in touch with you, or your website, and how they can participate in your beautiful work? Because we're going to be working in so many ways together in the next
We
month.
are. We have a tour coming up, I believe, to Scotland in 2020, and a podcast. So
yes.
We'll be doing much more
We're
together.
doing a tour to Scotland next year because Raven and I come from Scottish ancestors, and Raven is passionate about Scotland. Her husband Steve loves Scotland for all sorts of personal reasons, which I won't go into. And a really amazing trip that we're going to take you into the mystical Celtic heart of Scotland, which is a dream fulfilled for me. And I can't imagine anybody more wonderful to do it with than you. But I also want to dance with you, with your Hermetic principles and with your shamanic knowledge, and we're going to do that. And I'd love people to get to your website and to really glimpse the sincerity and the rigor and the beauty of what you're up to. So do help us.
Thank you, Andy. It's ravensinclaire.com. You can, my name has an E on the end, Sinclair with an E on the end, but you can type it either way and it will still get to my website. And that tells all about my work. I also want to mention that I have a quarterly publication called Sacred Science Journal.
This is gorgeous, yeah.
It blends science and spirit, and our next issue comes out in July, and it will be very Andrew Harvey heavy here.
Oh, wonderful. Andrew Harvey heavy should be a German adjective, shouldn't it?
I think it should. So we'll have a lot about you and your work in that issue.
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful, it's how many issues has it had? 2 so far?
You know, we're brand new. This will be our 4th issue.
The 4th one. I saw this, I think it was the 2nd one that I saw. It has amazing photographs.
The photographs are actually a big part of it. They're stunning, and they're by Evan Williams Photography, and just a little plug for him, evanwilliamsphotography.com.
He's wonderful. Isn't he your stepson?
He's my real son.
Your real son? Of course he's your real son. My mind is foggy. He's a wonderful guy, and his photographs are so revelatory. They're so grounded, but he sees each being with the kind of eye that we're talking about, with wonder and respect.
A passionate animal lover. Evan has been since he was small. So yeah, that really comes through in the nature photos that he takes.
And when we get this video out, which we will immediately, could you put links to his photographs so that people can really savor what we both love about his photographs in that? It would be so wonderful, because he's a lovely man and he's doing serious work at such an astonishingly young age. He's already such a mature photographer. This is wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It's in the service of the creation. He's not photographing anorexic models. He's photographing the creation with wonder. This is fantastic.
It is. It is. Thank you. So we'll get this out and have the links to, obviously, to your website, my website. We'll send this out, and hope everyone orders the book, because it's so much more than just a book. You know, that doesn't even do it service to call it that. So very, very important, powerful. Thank you so much for your work, and Carolyn Baker as well.
Thank you for your work. May it flourish, and may through our work, your work and mine, and the work of all of the different sacred activists who now know where we are and now know what is possible, may it all be blessed, and may we all go forward utterly free in our hearts and utterly joyful and suffused with divine energy, to give everything we can to help the whole human race wake up to the glory of the creation, so that we do everything we possibly can to preserve it and to live the extraordinary beauty of the relationships with animals and with all sentient beings that the creation offers us, if only we are empty, humble, in awe and reverent enough.
And so it is. Yes.
So really is, and so may it be.
So may it be.
God bless you.
You as well, Andrew. I'll talk to you soon.
I hope so. You'd better.
Lots of love.
Love to you.
Bye-bye.